Okay, now we're live.
All right, awesome. Welcome everyone to this Make With Me session. We are Maker John, and we're so excited to be presenting today. We're actually coming to you from several parts of Pennsylvania right now. One part that's sunny and nice, and the other part where there's a torrential downpour that several of us got caught in on our rides home tonight, but we persevered. So we're here now, and I'm really excited to be sharing all of this stuff with you. So I guess we're going to start with some brief intros, but the first thing I would like to talk about, I guess, and this is something that I always forget because so many people that we introduce ourselves to are not from Philadelphia. We can talk to you a little bit about what our name is. So I guess Maker John, for those of you not familiar with the Philly hip hop culture and community from the 1970s, it's I guess a catch-all noun. The term is context-dependent substitute noun. So that means you can use the word John in place of anything, like let's go to that Chinese food, John, or like where's the nearest book return, John. That's one I always use with librarians. So when we were coming up with a name last summer, when we were developing our Maker program at 5 libraries in North Philadelphia, we were like, well, what do we call this thing? We had this long list of names, and then we just finally decided on Maker John because it was the most elegant solution. But what I would like to do now is kind of turn it over to some of the Maker mentors that are on this panel, and we can introduce ourselves, say a little bit about the location they are, and some things about themselves. But, oh, I should introduce myself also. My name is Kei Steele, and I manage the Maker John initiative at the Free Library. BK, would you like to go next?
Cool. Hey everybody, I'm BK. I am a prototyper and a mentor. I work at the Central Branch, and I guess the project that I'm currently working on is doing participatory design workshops with teens to make badges, online digital badges for middle schoolers. Popcorn, Starry.
Hi, I'm Sari. I work at the Lillian Marrero branch, which is in North Philadelphia. I have a background as an artist, and I really got into maker culture as a way to teach, but I found that as an artist, the maker mentality is very similar, and it was very easy to get into. I prefer to work with copper tape a lot with myself and with the kids because you can do really quick prototyping, and it's really flexible. And I've also found that using conductive thread and fabric projects, and also squishy circuits, which uses Play-Doh as a conductive material, is a really great way to get kids engaged with projects and interested in circuits. Goda? Or Coco?
Hi, my name's Boda, and I work at a few different branches, but predominantly at Widener, which is a library in North Philadelphia. And I'm an artist as well, and I have a background in arts administration and working at a media art center in Buffalo, New York, where I also did some work with youth. And I also like working with all the projects that Sari mentioned, but I also think, like at Widener, for example, we have a pretty broad definition of maker that includes like a video project that we're working on, as well as a garden that we started there, and so have a pretty broad range of different kind of projects that we're doing. Coco?
Hey, I'm Coco, and I got started as a maker, I guess, when I was a kid, and started taking it a little bit more seriously when I majored in media art in undergrad. Recently, I've been using a lot of origami, but I also like using the copper tape I guess with the copper tape and the papers, the origami, I really enjoy how flexible the materials are and how transformative they can be, so you can make a lot of different things from them. I also really like to do video as well, so those are my favorite things.
So a few people talked about their favorite materials that they like to use. BK, did you talk about your favorite materials? No, you didn't. Do you want to? You don't have to.
I could if you want me to.
Sure.
My favorite material is silver ink right now, like circuit scrap stuff. That's what I'm really interested in tinkering around with, see what we can do with that.
Cool. So my favorite materials, just to keep this thing going, is that I like anything that's cheap and free to use. And that's one thing that we'll talk about later, is that we use a lot of recycled materials. And I like any material that where the kind of tactile side comes first, whether that's crafting or drawing, and then the electronics or the technology gets put on top of that. So things like e-textiles, or like what BK was saying with silver ink, so something where the art comes first. And also talking about like locations, I wanted to do a quick screen share of just so you get a sense of the geography of Philadelphia. If you take a look at this map, so you can see like that this is actually a map of Philadelphia, and there's the Delaware River that's going through it. What you can, let me just see. Okay, so I just saw that someone on the chat roll said my favorite materials to make with are barley and hops. That's pretty funny. Anyway, so yeah, keep your comments coming. It's a lot of fun to read them. Take a look at this map. What's cool about it, or I guess what's interesting about it, is that all of the red pins are where we're currently doing programming. I've said to a couple of my friends who are visiting Philadelphia for the first time, if you ever get a cycling map of Philadelphia, the map cuts off basically where that green highlighted box is. And so I guess that's, you know, it's like kind of this idea that if you're a tourist in Philadelphia, this is the area that you're in. And if you notice, all of our programming, 10 out of the 11 locations are outside of that box. And that was very deliberately chosen. When we started our Maker program, we wanted to target communities of teens and youth that weren't necessarily going to get exposure or access to these kinds of tools and materials, and thinking that the kids who live within that boxed area, who have access to better schools in that area, are going to have access to. So that being said, I'd also like to invite the mentors to talk about what their favorite materials to teach with are, and what materials have been the most successful at your locations that you're working at. And you guys don't all have to answer. I guess just a few of you can pipe up with the things that seem most popular that teens and kids use.
At Marrero, overwhelmingly, I think the most popular thing has been e-textiles. The kids are all really excited about making things that are wearable, and have also gotten really into using the sewing machine. We started off with doing a lot of hand stitching, and at this point, almost everybody knows how to use the sewing machine, and they're making all types of different projects. And as an intro, when kids are first getting started with circuits, I like to do squishy circuits a lot. Everybody really gravitates towards the Play-Doh, so it's an easy thing to transition them into building circuits with. And along the topic of our make cycle, it's also kind of a fun way to make a story with light. A lot of the times the kids will make little characters with the Play-Doh that they're using to build the circuit, and then it'll be a thing where these two characters are joined together to create the circuit, or like they'll make food items or birthday cakes and all different types of things. So it goes beyond.
I can actually show on a screen share what Sari's talking about. Do you want me to do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So this is one of the things. This is actually from Marrero, correct?
That's from Widener, actually, but they're like twins that couldn't decide. The girl that made that was also telling me a story as she was making it about the twins being like conjoined, but then they couldn't decide how to use the playground because one of them wanted to go on a slide and one of them wanted to like go on the swing set, and just like this whole narrative developed around the characters that she created and making this circuit.
That's awesome. I think that this one is actually from Marrero, correct, Sari?
Yeah, that one's from Marrero, and you can see it's a cake, and then it's attached to a spoon, and there's also a fork that's hanging out there in the periphery.
All right, cool. Any other materials that anyone wants to talk about?
Something that we've been working on at Pascalville sort of recently was the ArtBots, and so we were using the toothbrush motors from electric toothbrushes, taking them out of the toothbrush and then attaching them to some sort of apparatus that had like something that draws underneath it. So we use watercolors or markers usually, and the motor makes the whole thing vibrate, and then it creates like scribbles on a paper. I think that's really cool. In a similar way that that working with LEDs and lights is really cool. That something happens, like the magic happens when the circuit is closed, and with the light, the LED turns on, or with the ArtBot, the motor starts moving and something starts happening. So that's also been a really cool thing that we've been working on.
One interesting thing that Coco brought up is, I guess, what I really like to figure out when we're thinking about like the way that kids learn, or the way that I guess adults learn also, is trying to identify learning pathways and how to make introducing a kid to, I guess, maker activities or any of these workshops that we're developing, ways of creating trajectories or possible pathways for them. And one is through ArtBots that we've done both with teens, with younger kids, and with adult staff at the library through professional development. BK, do you want to talk about that trajectory, like going from ArtBots to soldering to something like the One Key?
Yeah, that's what I was going to kind of build off with Coco's little talk, and also someone on the chat was talking about our tools, mediums as well that we can use. And I'd have to say, like, solder and soldering irons are one of my favorite tools to kind of introduce to kids, especially because, like, once you get, say, away from squishy circuitry and just being able to manipulate stuff with your hands, you get into finer skills and a little bit of danger, I guess, as well, because you're working with this hot object that can burn your skin, and it's like a little scary. But it makes kids really kind of focus and get into the thing that they're making. And in particular with the ArtBots, it's just soldering wires to the actual motor that makes the little bot kind of roll around the table or vibrate around the table. And once you kind of get kids into soldering, whether or not it's with ArtBots or just taking two LEDs and sticking them together, for the most part, in my experience, I've worked in 2 different locations and been around a lot more. There's tons of kids that just kind of want to keep soldering, keep making with this tool that's just like melting things on copper tape or melting things together. And that is what led to a project that K5 mentioned, which is the One Key. So it's taking a Makey and creating your own version of the Makey. It was my thesis project for my undergrad. And what we did was we got copper tape, and we cut a circuit out with a vinyl cutter, and then the kids at a bunch of different branches and also different events were able to kind of get introduced to soldering or continue soldering, continuing what they're interested in or what they kind of have been geeking out on. They actually are able to make their own Makey. So not only are they kind of learning how to use the squishy circuit thing, soldering stuff together, but they're also taking ownership of their hardware in the process. And they can actually, it kind of goes full circle, and with the Makey Makey, in terms of making things with it, you can use Play-Doh again. So I didn't explain what the Makey Makey is. It's a way to turn anything that conducts electricity into a keyboard key. So a high five can turn into a spacebar key input on the computer, which then you can use with games or whatever you want to make. There's a bunch of resources online for all that sort of stuff. And I guess a good way to kind of show that maybe K-Fi is that magnetic mazes slide that we have in there. It doesn't have any one key stuff, but it just has some of the projects that we worked on. We went from just kind of playing with a box of stuff and working with magnets and having LEDs light up when you kind of moved around a magnet under the table, all the way to, if you want to go down one slide.
Christina, you might want to click on us just so so this shows up. I think when BK starts talking, it jumps to him. Okay.
The kids making little Play-Doh mazes that kind of bounce back and forth between the digital realm and the physical realm, so making things analog on the table and going back and forth. Cool. And then the biggest thing, I guess, at the end of this little experiment and kind of exploration was having other people at a celebration at the end of last summer and the end of this little project play around with what we were making. So if you want to go down one slide, the kids that we worked with last summer made this game and deployed it. And then all the people in this photo are just people that came to see what we had been working on for the summer. They're not related to what we were doing at all. They just came to see what was going on at this event. Cool?
Yeah. So we saw one question that was in the chat roll, and it's from, let's see, Michelle Stein. She said she'd love to hear about how this curriculum gets tied in with literacy, if it does. Does anyone want to address that immediately, or I guess I can talk about one way of that we've done this, and that's through coming up with projects that have multiple entry points and projects that are communal, collaborative projects. So, for example, at 2 of our sites, including the site that Goda is at, we decided to do a short film project. And one is a more like ongoing project that's still being made. Another was done just in a 1-month span. And we had some kids would come in and they would just work on the set design because that's all they're interested in. And other kids would work on the actual script writing process. And other kids would do all of the props. So basically, one kid throughout the day could be entering in the same project in multiple ways and could be doing things that would involve like storytelling through developing props, storytelling through developing characters and acting, or through actually writing the script. So that's one way of that we tie our projects into literacy. Goda, did you want to also talk about the movie at Widener?
Yeah, so it's the same idea where the reason we ended up doing that project is because when I came into that site, a kid was already writing a script, and so it just made sense to try to figure out how best to incorporate everybody else through their interests, whether that be acting or creating backdrops and props or sewing costumes, and then also editing. And I think especially through learning how to edit, that builds a lot of media literacy skills, just learning how the things that we see every day are being put together. We also it's a movie that takes place in the future, so to create backdrops for our green screen, one kid was using a digital image editor. GIMP is the one that he was using, just because that's a free one that we could download, to like take pictures from Google Maps of Philadelphia, of the area that the library is in and where the kids live, and adding different colors to them and like different like future graffiti to the walls. So just learning about how images can be altered digitally, I think, is also a part of media literacy and digital literacy, and that's how it ties in.
Coco, do you want to share that Little Prince project that you mentioned?
So, our projects can tie into also like books by relating to the characters in the story through the actual project that we're doing. So I have here a little prototype for a paper flower with an LED on it, you can see here. So it's made out of paper, and another maker mentor.
Did Coco freeze up for anyone else? Okay. Let's maybe wait for her to jump back. Okay, I'm going to do another screen share while Coco comes back to us of another quick entry project that we used a lot at different sites. We called these kindness cards, and these were basically a way to engage kids really quickly as they walked in the door of the library. And it's just a very simple circuit with an LED, and the LED would be punched through on one side, and on the other side it was mostly blank, so it gave them a chance to write something in here. And this person wrote on it, "You are such a wonderful person." Some of them were also just there, like a lot of kids would just decorate the outsides, and it seemed like everyone was always making this for someone else. So that's why we call them kindness cards. So it's like you would draw something on the outside of it and then give it to someone. We had also kind of tried to promote them as saying like, oh, well, you can make your own business cards, but it seemed like people had just started making them as gifts. And here are some kids that were making them at another Philly event that we were at. So I guess we should talk about some projects that you guys have been working on, or maybe some projects. I don't know if you have some projects that you've created, or I guess let's talk about storytelling with light, or this notion of storytelling with light. Did you guys bring stuff that you've been working on or stuff that you want to show off? Cool. Goda, why don't you start?
So mine's not going to be a very good visual example because it's light in here, and I'm not going to be able to truly show the full effect, but this is a little box projector, and I created it by just cutting out, like drawing out a flat shape of a box, then folding it together, adding an LED in the back there, and creating a copper tape circuit on the back and on top that can be closed with a penny or any other sort of conductive thing. And then on the front, I just used a piece of tape and I drew a picture of my cat that only has one eye on it. And then when you close, I don't know if it will be visible at all, but when you close the circuit, the light goes on and you can cast a projection on something. And then, so the reason that I think that this is a couple things. One is that this can be, originally when I made this project, it was with a shoebox and a flashlight, so it totally doesn't have to be with these particular materials, and is like pretty adaptable to whatever you have around. Including household items. But also just when I was a kid, all of my baby pictures and all my family pictures were slides, and so we would like sit around and take out the slide projector and watch, look at the photos, and people would tell stories about it. So that's, I think, the way in which that this could be tied in to storytelling. And people can, once everybody makes their projector, maybe you can sit in a dark room and have people go around and talk about what the image is that they chose to put on there. And then some like alterations might be making some sort of a front edition so that you can swap out the different images you would put in front of it, or even maybe make one where you can move the images and create the illusion of motion. You could also try to come up with a different way to do the switch to make it go on. So those are some ways in which the project can be altered to create more challenges.
I actually have my projector right here to show how like another projector can be made. This one has a switch on top, and it's supposed to be like a sunny day with the flower there. And I decorated the sides, and this is another way, like I could totally make a story about the sun and the background and stuff with this projector.
Coco, do you want to keep talking about the project that you had were originally talking about?
Yeah, sorry about that. So, so another maker mentor at the free library and I came up with a a way to relate it to the story of The Little Prince, because The Little Prince has a friend who's a flower and realizes that the flower is important to him because it's special. So this flower project is something that's totally customizable. Like, you can change the color of the petals, or like the inside, the shape of the petals. You can draw on them, and you can change the color of the LED. So this is a really cool project to do with kids, especially ones that really like to have like custom-made stuff or something that shows their individuality or unique style. And this is made out of just paper, an LED, and a battery, a coin cell battery. So those are all of the ingredients, and they all just kind of like connect to make the flower, and it's something cool they can take home and decorate their room with, and show their parents, and make it special.
So I just saw another question pop up on the chat roll, and someone was asking, what is the difference between making and creating? I guess I can start off with that. I mean, I think it's really just kind of like a jargon thing, especially now when you talk about like what is a maker, what is the maker movement, what is a maker fair. You know, this is all like part of this movement behind. You know, it's part of Make Magazine that's putting on all of this stuff, and I feel like in some way, and perhaps this is a bit more like cynical of me, but I think it's more of like them like identifying and saying like this is part of our movement, this is like our thing. But I think ultimately what making is, it's making and creating are very much the same thing. I think making is kind of getting this reputation as being more more technologically focused, but I almost don't like that, because I feel like it kind of makes these hard boundaries around the creative process, which is very fluid and could include any kind of material. Like making could be cooking theoretically, right? Or making could be dance or music or video. Yasmin Kafai, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania that we have partnered with in the past, has always said she's always like thought of like the maker movement as like geeks going public. Like, you know, you've been in your garage or in your basement for years working on these, like say like on this drone or this e-textiles project, and the maker movement gives you an opportunity to go out into the community and out of your basement and into like say these like internet forums or whatnot. Does anyone else want to jump in on that?
I think that the word maker too has the connotation of like making for the sake of making too, which means that when you're making something, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be an end product, but the way I think of it is that making is a process, and it doesn't really matter what product you end up actually making, but that the act of doing it, experimenting, and like trying new things and not being afraid to fail is a big part of it for me.
I think you bring up a really great point, Coco, and I think that's something that we also try to teach to the youth that we're working with. It's not about following the steps to have an end product, or it's not about, I guess, like going through steps like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you end up with a completed robot. Because where does that leave you at the end when you followed all of those steps? Like, it leaves you with this product, but you don't know. Like when I do something like that, I don't remember how I got there. Or I don't really know what I've learned. It's just like I feel like I'm kind of this puppet that's being led through these steps. Whereas what you seem to be talking about more is much more about like the tinkering process, and this notion of play and what happens when you're tinkering and playing with something with no end in sight. And that's actually going back to what BK was describing before with the makey magnetic mazes. That was kind of born out of this, I guess there are so many of these moments of serendipity, right? When you have a kid that's just playing with a tool or an object, and they figure out some use for it that you didn't even think of, or it just didn't occur to you to use this object in that way. Does anyone have any other stories of like moments of surprise they've seen with youth playing with objects? Putting you guys on the spot here. I have one actually that I saw that in a photo that someone had submitted. I'm going to do a screen share of that again. But this is like another LED project. Does anyone know what site this is from? Is this from Marrero also, Sari?
Yeah, this is from Marrero. So this was okay. I won't say names. I think that's probably I don't know. But this participant ended up making a parachute with one of the old Play-Doh cups and an LED, and it was really cool because he just decided that this was a thing he was going to make and found the materials he wanted to make it. And it was also a little bit of an exercise in failure because afterwards, when he was trying to use it, the strings got tangled up really easily, and he was a little bit frustrated about it. And then we were trying to think of ways that we could make it so that it wasn't doing that.
Cool. So one thing I'm also seeing pop up in the chat a lot is people saying like, well, making things is not new, tinkering is not new, why are we so excited about this, what's the big deal about the maker movement? I would agree with you, obviously, like this active making and like the arts and crafts movement, and that is not new, but certainly the internet is new, and the kind of the internet as like a learning platform and as a sharing platform and even as like a resource buying platform is very new. And so it really enables you to, what you might spend 20 years trying to develop and discover on your own, you can do probably in an afternoon. So that's where we really see the power of using things like technology to be able to enhance your projects.
And I think I can speak to that a little bit as well. I think that really the importance is about the emphasis that's put on it, that it's not about rote memorization or studying for a test. It's about exploring on your own. And, you know, I'm not terribly old, but even as a kid, I don't think that there was a ton of emphasis put on that in my education. And also, as a girl, I wasn't pushed to do things that were more engineering-oriented or exploratory in that way. And I think it being something that's made more of a culture and that's integrated more into both non-traditional and traditional education is pretty important and, you know, a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about, you know, oftentimes, especially in like these no-frills schools, particularly throughout Philadelphia, in the town that I grew up in as well, you spend so much time studying for things like the SATs or applying to get into college or studying for tests, and you're graded on your ability to answer a question. You know, like, is your answer right or is it wrong? It's not about your ability to ideate or to tinker or to play with an idea or to just follow the germ of an idea. It's about being able to answer something. And I guess with trying to get kids to play more, it's a way of kind of unlearning this way that we've been taught to learn. Or something that Sari also brought up that I think is very interesting is this notion of inclusion and, like, you know, what are you expected to learn, or what can you learn as a girl, for example, or what can you learn as someone who doesn't have who can't afford internet access at home? Like, what sorts of doors are open to you, what sorts of doors are closed to you? And that's something we certainly address through our Maker John program in libraries, is about, I guess, trying to break down those barriers of inclusion and the psychological barriers of what I guess maker programming is, and the physical barriers. So we don't have our own separate maker space. We do it on the library floor. So I guess it also brings up big questions about, like, is this about the community, or should this be about the community, or should it just be for the people who have the confidence to enter these spaces or already have the engineering mindset? And can things like writing and literacy be taught in these spaces that have these technological tools? Sorry, I'm just going on and on. Is there anything that anyone else wants to add to that?
Just quickly, also on a practical level, the way that the economy is changing, it's a lot more, it's a necessity that kids can be creative and think through things, because jobs are going towards the creative economy more and more in the US, and it's not about production, it's about having ideas and being able to execute them. So I think on a practical level, it's helping to prepare kids to enter the workforce and be able to not be left behind in that way.
And jumping off that point too, I mean, it's also about teaching kids how to be responsive and to be like these nimble, innovative thinkers. Because ultimately, like we were saying about jobs now, it almost requires kids to be able to think quickly on their feet, or to be able to solve problems in a creative way, as opposed to being able to like follow certain tasks and like follow like rules I guess like anything that someone throws at them, they need to be able to be responsive to it. So I think teaching this kind of mindset, like, okay, you're given this problem, this thing's broken, how would you take this apart and solve this? Or how could you like put this thing back together? I guess like that's what you seem to be getting at a bit. Okay, cool. So I guess we have about 20 minutes left, and I wanted to give you guys a chance to show off any other projects that you might have brought.
I brought a couple other projects. I have this e-notebook that I made during a tinkering session at the Free Library. It's made out of cardstock and paper, and inside there are LEDs that kind of help enhance the story. When I first saw the LED behind the paper, I thought like, wow, that looks kind of magical and nice, and so I came up with this story about a black pearl that's discovered in the ocean that has kind of like a special quality about it. And so this is the first page, and you'll see on the next page the copper tape circuit that it's made up of. So here's the LED, and then the copper tape goes around like this. The battery is held in place with a binder clip and completes the circuit. On the next page, the scuba diver finds it, and there's the copper tape circuit for that one. And then the last page of the story, it finds its way onto, like, as a crown jewel, which I thought was kind of like a nice way to make the pearl special. And then there's the copper tape circuit for that one. I wanted it to be like a story with just pictures and not words, but easily words could be added to this to kind of make it like a more literal story. I also have an e-textiles project that I also worked on at a tinkering session. At the time I was working on a lot of flowers, and I thought like, I should probably do something that's not a flower, so I made this lily pad. And it has an LED that is kind of like a little dewdrop on the pad. And so this is like it's kind of like a felt pocket, which if I turn it inside out, you'll kind of be able to see what kind of stitching I did inside of it. So here it is inside out. This is the LED right here. And then I don't know if you guys can see, but there's conductive thread that runs over here, and then there's a little pocket that I made to put the battery into. So the battery slips into there, and then the LED lights up.
Yeah. So your project, your copper tape circuit book, a lot of some people saw in the last week's Make Cycle, that was the Hack Your Notebook. There's several people created some copper tape notebook stuff. So it's nice to be able to jump off of that and into your stuff. And then, I mean, the e-textiles projects work in the very, very similar way, just using conductive thread as the material connecting the LED to the battery. Another question that jumped up on the blog that I thought was really cool was someone asked, are maker spaces the new shop classes? And I guess I wanted to throw that out to you guys to see what you thought about that. Did any of you guys take shop class in high school? BK's nodding, Sari's nodding, Goda's saying no.
I did.
I guess like the thing that I encountered in shop class when I was growing up was that, and I'm sorry, I asked you guys what your thoughts were, and then I kept on going. Shop classes were not typically for girls. Like, girls just didn't take shop class. That was one thing. The other thing that I noticed was that there is a reputation, and I feel like this is a bit controversial to say, but it was also that shop classes weren't for, like, quote unquote smart people. And so I felt like it was like the smart boys in my class were encouraged to take like math classes or like AP calculus classes or AP science classes. They were not encouraged to do shop class. So I feel like if Maker is going to become the new shop class, it's not just that it's going to replace it, but I feel like this whole idea of what shop is needs to be redefined, and like the entire culture behind it, in terms of what we had mentioned before, in terms of inclusion. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to set up a screen share to show something, so I'm a little not 100%.
There's a green arrow on the left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, I feel like the shop class thing is like a pretty, and Sari also in our chat put a combination of shop class and home ec, which I think is pretty apt, because we do teach a lot of skills that are like apt. Like, I remember in my school in shop class you made a lamp, or in home ec you learned how to sew things, and like those are all skills that are applicable to lots of different parts of your life, and I feel like we do encourage the development of those skills. But the other cool thing is that anybody can kind of come in and make anything that they want with the provided materials, anything that they can dream up. So the thing that I'm trying to screen share is actually something, hang on, let me see if I can click to, do you guys see something? Yes. Yeah, okay. So this is a code that a kid made who had learned about, like, I don't know, the old like code writing in class, and he came in and he had learned about this concept, but he had never really like made one before, and we had all the stuff and the space and the time and like the support he needed. So he created this, which is actually a welcome sign to our door. People can take it some time maybe to try and figure it out, but it actually says welcome, please come in on it. And then he created all these scrolls with it and like a word search that's in code also. So it's kind of a space to take what you're learning in school and just like experiment with it and make new things with it, whatever it is that you're inspired to do.
That's great. Oh, go ahead, Sari.
I think that one important distinction to make between Maker and shop class, though, is that at least in my experience when I was in school, shop class was very much about learning a very specific skill and executing it correctly. So say you were building a box or making a frame, and there was a specific technique that you were shown, and your grade was dependent on whether you could replicate that successfully. So that's very, very different from what Maker does. It's almost kind of the opposite in a way.
I'd also like to add, just as a word of caution to educators who want to introduce these projects into their classrooms, to provide an atmosphere where like it's okay for girls and boys to be working on the same project. So I think that like the notebook and the projector are pretty like gender neutral projects. But what I've noticed with eTextiles is that like usually the girls are drawn to this kind of project and the boys are a little bit more apprehensive. But actually, like guys that like sewing, like really like sewing. It's not like a gendered. It doesn't have to be a gendered thing. So my word of caution is to tell the guys like, yeah, this is cool too, and maybe. like push them to make projects that interest them instead of like a lily pad or a flower. They can make, I don't know, a dinosaur or something that they like.
Yeah, we have another question from Michelle also about if we get into robotics or not. And the answer is yes, we have one of our maker mentors who is studying computer science and education, and he just did an internship at the Penn Robotics. It was a Penn Robotics program last summer. So he is focused, he's done some workshop. He was doing them at Pascalville, right, Coco, with you? But what one project that he did that I thought was fantastic was that he had some of the youth at the Kensington Library, so that's one of our libraries in North Philadelphia. They built their own 3D printer and they printed on their own 3D printer. So that was one project he had, and I suppose that's kind of robotics. I guess he did another robotics project, but I guess we were finding that the robotics projects, they needed a lot of very specific parts, or at least the projects that he wanted to do, and we wanted to buy more materials that would be more versatile, and although what he had was really low cost, we wanted things that we could scale to all 11 branches. So, and the other thing is that I feel like, I guess the way that we're going with things right now, robotics just seems to, I guess we say that we do robotics, but I feel like robotics has a ton of baggage with it also. I guess when you're thinking about gender, and robotics tends to be the thing that boys tend to do more than girls, at least in the past 10 years. It's like robotics, code wars, things like that. And it's generally like these single projects, and they can sometimes be competitive. So when we do robotics, we try to figure out ways to make them communal, to make them collaborative, and to make them a bit less competitive than traditional robotics. Coco, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So that maker Ryan works at Pascalville with me, and I've seen him interact with the kids with the robotics and also with certain kinds of programming. What I've observed is that like the younger the kids are, the less like gendered their reactions are to the projects. So a young girl, when I like brought up robotics, I didn't think that she would be that interested, but her face totally lit up. She's like, I love robots, and she kind of got into she like expressed a lot of interest in it, which I guess I wasn't expecting because she was a little girl. But I think that the younger generations are kind of like opening themselves up to like making all projects gender neutral projects, but especially with like the older teens and stuff, then they can become a little bit more more gendered. And yeah, art bots are also robots, and like kids of both like boys and girls really like making them, I think, equally.
I just wanted to add that I've noticed the thing about younger kids seeming to have less like entry barriers due to gender to projects. That's something I've noticed with sewing, any textiles, and the younger kid, like when at Moreros area, I've noticed this, and also at Widener, that everybody, like boy or girl, is really into sewing things if they're like under the age of like 10. But then after 10, there needs to be kind of a specific project to get them enticed to do it. So at Widener, that's been like costumes for this like crime drama that we're making. You know, that's like, then it's okay to learn how to sew because it's for this thing. Or like making a pencil case. People are really into that. Like making something, then you need to create a project that will kind of like tear down that barrier that seems to exist for just like the activity itself.
I'm going to share another project that Goda did, because we only have a few more minutes, but this is one of, I love this project. Goda, will you talk about these light boxes that you did?
Oh, actually, Sari was there too, so maybe she'll have something to add. But basically, that it was just like a collage and drawing project with probably a copper tape circuit on the back of some boxes that we had for a different project, and the boxes were left over. And so the kids just created like collages on the front of the box, and then the cool gradient effect is because is just created by two different LEDs being on the back. I don't know, Sari, if you have anything to add on to that.
So that was actually one of the first projects that I did when coming on as a mentor, and this isn't specifically tech related, but I was really amazed by how elegant the compositions were that the kids made and how intuitive they were with the visuals. It was a really cool experience to have when just getting started.
Awesome. Any other projects that anyone wants to share? I want to share my project because I just did it right before let me see, I'll just jump on it. So this is, okay. So like I said, some of my favorite things are a combination of drawing and storytelling. And basically, so I'll get off of the screen share for a second. I'll show you the tools that I used for this. So we had all of these leftover really cheap like keychain lights. And if you can just press on them. I don't even know what they're from. It was from some sort of library project. And I have a ton of these cat toys, basically, from my cat. So I was trying to figure out ways of like combining all of those and turning it into a story. So I came up with this story, and this is the result of me being like, I'm in a long-distance relationship with everybody, all of my family members, everybody that I know right now. And sometimes you wish there was some way of sharing stuff with them, like, or sharing messages with them in some other way that's besides like email or phone. So this story was about there's a gorilla on one side and a pig on the other side, and they're sending messages to each other on the moon. So again, I used this flashlight and I used this cat toy that has a laser on it to basically just shine the light on it. And I was inspired by Glow Doodle, which is something that Chad had posted on the G+ community. I think it was Chad or Kevin, but it was just using, I put my camera on manual mode and took about a 2.5-minute long photo and just shined the light on the picture and drew with the laser. But it'd be easy enough to do with Glow Doodle and your webcam on your laptop. Has anyone else played with slow, with long exposure images? I guess I was seeing this pop up on the community quite a bit, so I was excited about the idea of using photography as a way to tell stories also. So I think we have about a few more minutes left, and I guess I'd like to open up to you guys, maker mentors, to give any last thoughts. Or I guess like if you had like a big takeaway that you would give to someone who is a more formal educator, like what kind of advice might you give them on getting started with like either tools or materials or some big ideas or questions to think about, or I guess think about when you were getting started as a maker mentor, the big questions that you had or the things that you were thinking about.
I would say one thing to consider if you're first getting started is that you're in a really special place yourself because you're learning these things for the first time, and so you're really fresh coming to the materials, and you also have more of an idea of what the obstacles are to learning these things because you're also taking it on for the first time. So take advantage of that when you're designing programming, and consider the things that you're having trouble with and the things that were easy for you when you were learning, and that really is the most helpful thing to getting started with maker programming and teaching it to others.
I'd like to add that in this age of No Child Left Behind and like not really getting to work with kids creatively, like this kind of maker programming could really be invaluable to a lot of different students, especially those who are kinesthetic learners, because they can really use their hands to get into the projects. That these projects can really create a lot of like deeper meaning with the children for them to, or the students to kind of like really internalize whatever lesson was supposed to come along with the project.
On to me? Cool. So I guess my favorite thing, and what I've been kind of talking about in chat, is like the narrative that kids come up with in terms of interacting with different Squishy Circuits characters that they make. And some of it can get like really deep, like you can have two like Squishy Circuit Play-Doh figures that like are dating and then they break up, or like they go through these like really crazy experiences. And I really enjoy like watching that, and especially having other kids document it. When I was at the Kensington branch, there was one kid that would say hold the camera and film what was going on, and then another kid would just kind of be like moving the two like clay figures around. And as Goda was saying, and it's in the chat, you can get that in those stop motion animations that we've been doing a lot of recently.
So something that Sari mentioned and that BK has mentioned, and these are kind of my big takeaways from it, is this idea of professional development. So it's not just you teaching the kids about, maker activities or e-textiles or robotics or whatever. It's really about your own learning and what happens when you're learning at the same time as someone else. Well, what happens is that a kid can be a teacher to another kid. A kid can be a teacher to a teacher. A teacher can be a teacher to another teacher. I just love how everything kind of gets democratized when you throw in all of these new tools and this new way of thinking. So that's a really exciting thing for me that we've been doing with Maker John. It's like our own professional development, the professional development of our librarians, our executive staff, our security guards, the custodians, getting everyone involved in this kind of learning has been really awesome. That's something we've done on our professional development days. Another thing that I would like to leave you guys with, and then I guess it'll be on to Goda for last thoughts, is like share whatever you're doing with kids out in the world. It's really important that you get them to document work and to share, how they're learning stuff, what they're finding challenging about learning. I feel in a lot of these communities, it's kind of a lot of people will just share like, my teens or my kids made this, 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 and this, and it becomes just like, well, you're just showing off what your kids did. But what's really valuable is, I guess, sharing the big questions that you have, or the things that you're struggling with, or the things that you're like kind of like observing and watching happening, because that's really like the interesting meaty stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that needs to be out in this community and needs to be talked about. Like, for example, like questions about like gender and youth that have access to things or youth that don't have access to things. It enriches the conversation, and I'm excited about that kind of stuff moving us forward as a community. Goda, do you want to finish up with anything? Okay, you're saying no. So we're a couple of minutes over. If you guys wanted to contact us, we're going to be doing the Twitter chat tomorrow, and we're really excited to see what you guys make. So I guess everyone, shall we say bye? Oh, it's on Thursday. I'm sorry. Our Twitter chat is on Thursday, but we'll also be in the G+ community and checking out what people are making through Twitter as well. I think we're ready to sign off. All right. Thank you, everyone, for an awesome conversation. Have a good night.